Benvenuti alla Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò della New York University. We are delighted to have you here. As you might know, this is the third of the series Italian Table Talks that we are organizing with Gruppo Italiano. And I have to give credit really to Gruppo Italiano because they're doing most of the work, if not all of the work, in putting together this extraordinary panel with experts from both sides of the ocean that include people in the restaurant industry, food historians, scientists, producers of products that are used and employed in Italian cuisine, both here and in Italy. So they're really doing an incredible job, and your presence here is a testimony to the fact that the topics that we decided to address are relevant, are interesting, are very much needed. They very much need to be discussed nowadays. Tonight's discussion in particular, as you know, focuses on the relationship between authenticity and globalization. How can you provide authentic Italian products, in this case, in this globalized world? I had a sort of sneak preview today of a pre-discussion, and I assure you that it's going to be interesting, engaging, and also fun to listen to. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you the person that is behind these Italian Table Talks. It's a person that is familiar to most of you. He's the owner of the Leopard Restaurant Group, and he's also very committed to educate people in the field of Italian cuisine. So he's not only aiming at making his restaurant successful, they're incredibly successful, but also in educating the people to eat well, even when they eat at home, and to really understand what Italian cuisine is. So please welcome Gianfranco Sorrentino.
Allora, buonasera. I am Gianfranco Sorrentino. I am the president of Gruppo Italiano. First of all, let me thank Direttore Albertini for his hospitality, and of course his team for the incredible organization. I also would like to thank our Congressman Francesca Lamarca. Unfortunately, she cannot be here because she had to fly to Rome for an emergency. As you know, Italy has been in emergency for the last 40 years. And we didn't have a stable and long-lasting government since Julius Caesar. I'm not kidding. Anyway, I would like to read just a few words of what Francesca said. I regret to miss this important event very dear to me. As a person of the Mediterranean background, I found this topic appropriate and lovely. Italian food industry and the restaurant are strongly linked to values, flavors, tradition, and knowledge of authenticity. They represent the value of success and recognition. Imitation and fake in Italian food are issues to be faced and solved without fear. I greet you with the best wishes, Francesca Lamarca. Thank you, Francesca. Also, now I have to thank our sponsor. Without their help, we won't be here. Let me thank the Acqua Smeraldina, the Latteria San Pietro, Birra Antoniana, Accademia Italiana del Tartufo, Pergola Tartufi, and Prosecco Valdo. Next things that I want to talk is a little bit about what happened the last days. Unfortunately, Davide Paolini, our speaker, cannot make it because his mother, 92 years old, she lives in Forlì. She had an accident. She's under surgery. Our best wishes to her and to Davide Paolini, but we've been lucky that he sent his remarks that our moderator, Colameco, is going to read after, are his own view of what's happening in the Italian food industry in Italy. Now, a few words about the Gruppo Italiano. It's a no-profit organization dedicated to fostering and promoting the genuine Italian product and the Italian culinary culture in the United States. We want to inform our members and the general public on specific issues and topics regarding the restaurant and the hospitality industry. And we do that doing educational activities, original programming, strategic partnership, tasting events. We have to contact, we send information among our member restaurant, producer, importer, and distributor of authentic Italian products. We work with the press institution and culinary school because we think that all these institutions, they have a big stake in promoting and making the people know about Italian products, Italian cuisine and Italian wines. And tonight with the Italian table talk, that is growing, really, I am amazed how many people is coming here. We were gonna talk about globalization and authenticity, the future of Italian restaurant. We will explore the increasing, perhaps not stoppable, trend of mixing the national cuisine. Globalization is the natural result of the world becoming smaller through more frequent traveling, of course, the broader access to internet, regional trade barriers that have been relaxed, and probably not here with our president, and the greater product sharing among the country and restaurant kitchen. However, this blurring of national boundaries show up in the blending of cuisine, but at what price? Diluting the authenticity of national and regional cuisine, the loss of a culinary anchor and the food easily identified with a particular country? And what effect will this have specifically upon a restaurant trying to maintain the culture and the regional authenticity? What will be the future of Italian restaurant menu look like in 10, 15, 20 years from now? And what about the similitudes and the contrast about the Italian cuisine in Italy and the Italian cuisine here in the United States? And the most important for us, Restaurateur, what the customer of the future is going to look like when he goes to an Italian restaurant. And we can analyze these topics through very different aspects. Let's start to say a little bit what is happening in Italy. Many chefs and food critics say that we never had such good food and great product like now. And probably is true, but let me read an interesting article that I saw a few weeks ago on the Wall Street Journal by B. Wilson. She's a very famous journalist, a British journalist. We invite her, she couldn't make it because she's writing a book. So I will quote that, I will say that she said that she went to this famous Italian restaurant, Osteria Francescana by Massimo Bottura, and the best thing she had was the bread stick in the middle of the tables. Well, so let me read a few things that she wrote. One of the 10 courses tasting dinner was called Burn. It consists of a pool of intensely charred-tasting black squid ink broth, served with an equally black savory cookies filled with raw sardine. And as the evening went on, the food became more experimental. Another of the dishes was a tribute to the Amalfi Coast. It was a hybrid of tomatoes on toast and a rambaba. Depending on how you look at it, this can either be dessert pretending to be lunch, or lunch pretending to be dessert. Let's be clear. Massimo Bottura is a great chef and is an artist anyway. But seems that in Italy there is this kind of creativity at all costs. You know, seems this is the trademark of the modern chef in Italy. And all the chefs, they have this kind of spasmodic run towards the Michelin star. They have to differentiate each one from the other to be more innovative than the other. So I guess, is this the time to give back to the Italian trattoria? which is the identity of the Italian cuisine, well known all over the world, and is searched and visited by millions of tourists that they come to Italy. And why the trattoria are considered minor by this great chef and the press? Now let's talk about what's going on in the US. What is going to be the Italian restaurant? What do they have to do to be innovative but to keep their identity? Are we going to see more Italian restaurants mixing ingredients from all over the world? And what about using ingredients that are not really Italian but now are cultivated in Italy? I can think about the caviar Calvisius. But also, what about outside Italy, and especially in the US? Is the Italian cuisine perceived more as the classic cuisine with the known dish, or just spaghetti and meatballs, chicken parmigiana, and pizza? Personally, I believe that in this time of the intense globalization, nouvelle cuisine, molecular, in the time of star chef, the food is intended like entertainment. I think that we should stop a little bit. Perhaps we should think about the simplicity in preparation, simplicity and cleanness in the taste of the dish. Food should be represent again a moment of coming together, convivial. Food has incredible products, fresh, delicious, and healthy and safe. Of course, today we are more conscious about the quality of the product. All of us love to have bio-organic product from a small farm, but also we have to be serious and pragmatic, because very soon we're going to be 10 billion people and we have to feed all of them or all of us. And we're not going to make it with the small farm. So we need more technology, but I think we need more good technology, no pesticide, no chemicals, no GMO, but probably technology like a satellite that can help the farmer to know the weather, the sensor devices that they can tell the farmer when they have to irrigate the land, and things like that. I seem very conservative, and for probably by my age I am, but I think innovation is very important. What is in innovation today can become the classic of tomorrow. Italian cuisine cannot be static, has to evolve with the time and the pace of the new generation. So I think that we have tonight a great panel, and I hope that the panelists that they can answer some of the questions that I propose tonight. Let me introduce first now our Trade Commissioner, Maurizio Forte, that is going to talk a little bit about the authenticity. Thank you.
Thank
you. Don't worry, we are not wearing all the same suit. It's just... A great minds think alike. Thank you, Gianfranco, for organizing such a great event. The Italian Table Talks is growing and is a very, very full house tonight. And thank you, Stefano, for having us here. It's always a pleasure. Talking about restaurants and Italian cuisine, there is a king. There is the most important character. That is not the guy putting the money, actually. It's not only that one, but it's the Italian wine. So before entering into the main topics, that is authenticity, Italian ingredients, and what Italian government is doing to support Italian companies and Italian restaurants to do their business in the world, let me talk just a few moments about Italian wine. Italian wine is very successful in the world, and it's very successful in the United States. Actually, we export 1/4 of our production to United States. We are the first supplier in quantity, the first supplier in values in terms We are ahead France. Sometimes we are a little bit behind, but definitely we are the first one for white wine, red wine, not necessarily the first one for sparkling wine. And we have almost 1/3 of the market. So it seems everything is perfect, everything is good. Actually, there is something we can improve. Is the perception of Italian wine that is, with good reasons, considered just a wine for every day. Is considered a wine with a very reasonable cost. It's considered a friendly wine, and all these things are true and are. We want to keep this image and this profile, but Italian wine is also great wine that can be used for very important occasions and can be also sold in a certain proportion at a higher and higher level. So that's why with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Economic Development, where Italian Trade Commission belongs to, and Italian producers, we have decided to launch the biggest ever advertising campaign on Italian wine in the United States. Italian producers, importers, and the distributors, consortium, they are very, very good in organizing events, in organizing tasting, in involving consumers and clients, but they cannot invest millions and millions of dollars to promote Italian wine and to do a big advertising campaign. So I take the occasion of this great event also to introduce you this campaign. The campaign has been launched in April 2018 till July, and now the second part we start exactly in September until the end of the year. Is mainly social. I hope you have seen it. Up to now, we have almost already reached 400 million impressions, and we want to do more. We are mainly targeting in 5 states: New York, 3-state area, California, Illinois, Texas, and Florida, where 67% of the Italian wine is imported and consumed. So first thing first, let's see this video that is meant to elevate as much as possible the perception of Italian wine, combining the wine that is one excellent product of Italy together with other excellent things we have in Italy. I hope you will like it. Please. So passion, Italian wine tastes the passion. Passion is really the key word because we can do anything without putting a lot of passion. This is a typical Italian way of doing things in life. Now, going to the topic of tonight is authenticity. And before talking about the authenticity of Italian restaurants, and actually I'm not doing to do this because I'm not, Italian government is not the one decided which restaurants is authentic, which is the direction, if it's a fusion, if it's trattoria, if it's a creativity, if it's tradition. This is too complicated. We cannot do it in Italy. Imagine if we can do around the world. But one thing we can do is try to preserve and protect the authenticity of our ingredients, because this is the real treasure that Italy has and the real treasure that Italian restaurants or even restaurants from other countries can do when they use our product. Must be authentic. The big issue we have in the world, we can deny this, is the Italian sounding product. There are several surveys that have been done recently, and it seems that this phenomena values is around the world between 16 and 100 billion euros. That means almost 120 billion US dollar. And imagine that the export of Italy is less than around 40 billion. So it's 3 times bigger of our export. Specifically in the United States, we export $4 billion of authentic Italian products, and the sounding ones represent 24. So for each dollar of authentic Italian food, there are $6 of Italian sounding product. Where is the problem? The problem is that these products are not illegal. It's not counterfeiting, but it's just providing wrong information to consumers. It's just evocating the Italian origin with Italian flag, with names like Peppino, Capri, Duomo, and whatever, and it's also using Italian words like Italian tradition, Italian style, Italian recipe, non-handmade, and stuff like this. This is a big issue. Before doing what we have done, and then I'll tell you briefly what we have done, we made a survey, and with this survey we have discovered 2 things that maybe you that are in the business know better than us. First question, we have done this question to thousands of people belonging to a panel in 4 key states, again, Texas, California, in Illinois, New York. Do you know that there are some products that look like Italian products but are not Italian? Well, 50% say no. I have no idea about this problem, this phenomena. For me, whatever has the Italian flag, has an Italian name, is Italian by definition. I don't even turn to check the label. Wow. So we decided to do a big advertising campaign, like the one we have done for wine. But for wine, the problem is not Italian sounding wine. The wine is the problem is that we want to elevate the perception. For food, the issue is that we should inform American consumers that you must be careful. If you really want to buy something Italian, you must check. And the second question, to the other 50%, they answer, yes, I know that there are Italian sounding products. Are you buying? Yes. Why you are buying? Because they are easier to find. Some of them say because they are cheaper, because I like more, because I don't care about origin. But a big part of the panel said because it's easier. So the second thing we have to do is to make it easier to find Italian products. So we have done 2 big campaigns to educate American people to know more about authentic Italian products. The first one has been done 2015-16 with a video signed by Silvio Muccino that reached 1 billion impression. And the second one is ongoing, will finish in a 1 week time, and is already reached the half billion impression. We are going to see it because our intention is to explain American people that not because it looks Italian is Italian. And I don't want to. We cannot fight against the country that is hosting us. I cannot say anything against the United States. But in Naples, we don't do Italian, American style, made in Italy bourbon. Why you are doing Italian style mozzarella in Kentucky? It's as a consumer, not as a trade commission. Of course, I'm paid for that. As a consumer, I found it a little bit weird. So we have this video, and then also we have some printed advertisement I want to show you, and then I'm going to stop my speech. Let's see the video about the Italian sounding product.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other by the time I finish this song?
Just because it looks Italian doesn't mean it's Italian. The label says it all. Choose only genuine Italian products from Italy. Discover more at ItalianMade.com.
And together with this, we also have some printed advertisement or some advertisement that we can see it that is used on social and whatever. With this claim, the label says it all. We have educated consumer, even in Italy, let me say, even in Italy, to check the label. Because you can decide to buy whatever you want, but you must know what you are buying. So here we say that you are what you eat. So it's better you check product of Italy, made in Italy, imported from Italy, and others. If you want to buy Parmigiano Reggiano or Grana Padano instead of Parmesan, that doesn't exist. Parmesan doesn't exist. It's an English word to describe something that in Italy doesn't exist. And we have something else. Oh, this never judge a book by the cover. So again, pasta in Italy is made with a certain regulation, with a certain raw materials, with a certain process. And if you want Italian pasta, the pasta must come from Italy. Again, this is also for cured meat and for salami history in the making, because of course we have thousands, hundreds, sometimes thousands of years of experience in doing our products. Last one is, okay, non tutto quel che brilla è oro. This is very good for olive oil. So again, I really don't know what to say about the future of Italian restaurants. I cannot say anything, but together with the other panelists this morning, we have, thanks to Gianfranco, a very interesting warming up talking about tonight's topics. For us, the Italian government, what is important is to defend, protect the authenticity of our products. Then you can decide to mix with other ingredients from other countries. You can decide to use Italian traditional balsamic vinegar on a foie gras from France. But if you use Italian products, please check the label, tell your customers, tell your family, tell your friends, check the label and be sure that you are buying something that is really coming from Italy. This is the message, and this is the reason why Italian government is investing a lot, specifically in the United States, to protect our producers and to protect the consumers at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Maurizio, very interesting. So now let me introduce our moderator, Michael Colameco. He's an American chef, author, and media personality, a veteran of restaurant industry. He is the host of a producer of Michael Colameco Real Food, one of the most popular enduring on the iconic Channel 13. Michael?
Thanks, everybody. Gianfranco, do you want me to start with the comments that...
Yes, please.
Let me see. Can anybody get a light back here, because it's dark? Otherwise, well, let's see if I can read this. So, as you know... There we go. Thank you, whoever did that. David Pelini was supposed to be here. He's a radio host and a journalist, better known as the Gastronaut. He's an expert on Italy's culinary wonders and the author of several guidebooks. Anyway, you heard his mom's not well, so he wrote this, and I'm going to read his words verbatim. From Italian local cuisine to global cuisine, more and more throughout all Italian kitchens, food is becoming show business, and cooks, well, entertainers. This shouldn't come as a surprise if we think of how everything in our society is all about appearance and trying to cash in on it in an almost compulsive way. In their restaurants, our chefs only aim in surprising diners with dishes that try to be original, in quotes, designer cooking, as it is often called, imitating the fashion industry, offering descriptions that would make futurists, artists envious, but that are often only copies of other copies of older recipes. Indeed, creativity at all costs is the trademark of celebrity chefs. Containers are turned into content, pasta is used as a side dish, and all the ingredients of a traditional recipe become a stuffing for other food. Ravioli filled with cotechino and lentils, carbonara sauce, amatriciana sauce, etc. I don't think he's happy. And so, as a result, we have cappuccino made with meat or fish instead of coffee, explosive food, cold fusion, forced contrast of hot and cold foods in the same container, and a great emphasis placed on the food's appearance that perhaps is unnatural or extreme in their color combinations. Vegetable charcoal and red, black, or pink salt. These serve no purpose for a dish's tastes. They are extravagant or unusual shapes of elements unrelated to food. At the same time, people's preference for more rapid and efficient procedures and short waiting times, you always need to have a version of a dish that already has rested, raised, and fermented. It's turning lunches or diners a mere recital of the menu, especially the ingredients, used as a narrative or scenic pretext. Being surprised and having fun is not synonymous with eating well, though. The eating experience has simply become, like attending an event, a form of modern entertainment based on imagery to create an atmosphere, capture the imagination, become fashionable. Trays that release smoke, scents spreading in the air, turning the lights off before bringing a dish to the table, more and more. Chefs are becoming similar to designers who use the catwalk to cause a sensation, showing clothes that will never be produced. In the same way, chefs create tailor-made dishes for a narrow audience of food connoisseurs, whom they welcome in their kitchens, people who have the power to give a chef success and the status of creative genius, again in quotes, or to downgrade one to the category of canteen cook. That's the reason behind the sudden success of some renowned restaurants and their equally fast fall from grace. Food as entertainment is not a virus spread by talent shows, as many believe. If anything, it's the opposite. TV shows have been invaded by cooks turned chefs. Television has been corrupted by the evils of Italian cuisine that has long adhered to the dogma, amaze and entertain. However, it must be said that television contributed to making it popular. Bolstered by television, this trend has a strong influence, especially on the new generation of Italian chefs, considerably less talented than the previous generation. Ouch. That's my word. The majority of the new chefs that are enjoying a rise in popularity in recent years have already been influenced by the media, even before they could become professionals. The appearance of food that has lost its normal function of stimulating appetite, now how it looks is more important than how it's cooked. Photography comes before gastronomy, amazement before taste. The collective misconception was thinking that it was possible to destroy and reconstruct ingredients and raw materials at will, creating new flavors, just like Adria has been doing for years, only because they used his same miraculous ingredients, lecithin, agar-agar, etc. His inventions, spherification, and his gadgets, siphon, pacojet, etc., the virus spread by the Spanish chef, this tendency to make food spectacular has negatively influenced many renowned international chefs, including the most decorated Italian chefs, such as Massimo Bottura, David Scabin, Carlo Craccio, and the list goes on. I don't want to name them all, sorry. Actually, without a fusion-oriented approach and combining Italian cuisine with that which is considered the ambassador of successful cuisine in the world, it would be difficult to join the select group of people who are invited to international congresses, let alone appear in international rankings such as the well-known World's 50 Best Restaurants, a list, by the way, that every year rewards a chef through a debatable international poll. After Ferran Adria and the Roca brothers from Spain, René Redzepi from Denmark, one of the recent winners in 2016 was Massimo Bottura from Italy for his restaurant Osteria La Francescana in Modena. As further proof of what has been affirmed, this chef has departed from Italian tradition, even though he makes large use of the products of his land. Parmigiano Reggiano, balsamic vinegar, mortadella, and traditional recipes like tortellini and lasagna as an inspiration. These foods were modernized, renewed, deconstructed, and reconstructed following artistic, literary, and musical suggestions, or creating new shapes and textures. And so we have dishes like Memory of a Mortadella Sandwich, 5 ages of Parmesan Reggiano with different textures and temperatures. The osso buco contradiction. Non-boiled boiled beef. Cotechino ravioli. Embryonic eggs stuffed with ragu broth. Tribute to monk. Camouflage, and so on. And speaking of a dish, a compression of pasta and beans. He said that between Joel Robuchon, his creme royale from the classic French cuisine, and Franadria Rosemary's Air, he added his grandmother's traditional recipe from Modena, Parmesan crust instead of pasta. Unlike its predecessors, though, Redzepi, who created a movement, and Bocca, who grew within a movement, Bottura is still only a leader without followers. His Italian colleagues express themselves with their own personal dishes and use different models. Unfortunately, many restaurant owners or chef patrons have chosen models that reproduce the international trend as dictated by gastronomic conferences, in particular, Lo Mejor la Gastronomia in San Sebastian, as well as requirements imposed by food critics on Italian guides. The Michelin Guide in particular, especially in the past, stressed the importance of stylish locations, Belgian linen tablecloths, crystal glasses, a wine cellar with a varied choice of wines, Italian, French, Australian, and so on, long menus and also tasting menus with expensive ingredients, mostly imported, to be in step with the globalization of markets. The demand for fine ingredients imported from abroad has made chefs too dependent on distribution companies, though, which in turn have marketed products, albeit quality and select ingredients, that have greatly affected the menus offered. Not only have ingredients ready for use selected and divided into portions in the kitchen, it has penalized the market, despite their quality. It has also undermined people's relationship with the land, their true culinary traditions. So, we have invaded by the black cod, the Basque stockfish, the king crab of the Atlantic Ocean, anchovies of the Cantabrian Sea, the Atlantic bluefin tuna, Norwegian, Irish, Scottish, and Lithuanian salmons, Chinese caviar, sea urchins of Asturias invaded by Japanese Wagyu meat, Kobe beef, etc., American, Australian, or Argentinian Angus, breast chicken, Bavarian or English beef. He's going on here. Bavarian or English beef, Iberian lamb, French rabbit, French snails, French, Hungarian or Israeli foie gras, and also tobiko, the kombu kelp, the pink Himalayan salt, the red and black salt of Hawaii, guarnada, quinoa, tonka beans, South American seeds, shiso, a Chinese herb, daikon, a Japanese root, shiitake mushrooms. All must have ingredients in the dishes of the top chefs and in those of their many imitators. The list can be expanded, adding some imported techniques, tempura, gelatinization, spherification, sous vide vacuum cooking, etc., and innovative tools like the PacoJet siphons liquid nitrogen, blast chillers, and so on. As Paolo Sorrentino wrote, I wonder if the decadence of the world didn't perhaps start with that bloody creme caramelisée. Soon we'd be on the slippery slope to risotto with champagne, penne with vodka, even maltagliati scented with roses, dooming ourselves to lucid, unavoidable failure. The world changes as the menus change, and we don't realize it. The race to approval and emulation rather than personal growth shows the insecurity of Italian chefs who so far have been unable to create something original, something around which it would be possible to create a new movement in the same way as Spanish and Northern European chefs did, or even American chefs with fusion food and the Japanese with the sushi mania. Instead, Italian chefs are trying to be innovative, creating recipes based on foreign trends and ingredients. This is a choice that they deemed necessary in order to bear comparison with their popular colleagues from other countries. To be part of the international culinary circus and to appear in the international rankings, to get us invited to conferences and conventions and thus gain prominence. All that Italy has ever managed to export is old recipes. That is our tradition. Proof of this is the success of Italian restaurants who propose traditional dishes. Interestingly, the so-called innovators have not yet been able to duplicate this success. They have not captured the appreciation of the local customers abroad. And that's that. Okay. So I guess he's not happy. I guess there's a crisis in Italian cooking. You know, it's funny. We were talking about this with Gianfranco earlier. 10 years or so ago, we were in this room, and it was one of those similar conferences. Tony Meg at that time was hosting it, and I was, I think, one of the moderators for that panel. And it was the same discussion about, you know, where Italian food is, what is Italian food, and authenticity. And it's something I've had to wrestle with my whole life. I'm an Italian American. My grandparents on both sides came from southern Italy. Some of my earliest memories were the greatest memories I have, which is my mom's mother, Nancy Dorenzo, preparing these incredible Sunday meals that started at 2 in the afternoon and ended when everybody passed out around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And everything she did was homemade. I mean, she came here as an immigrant. Her husband was a tailor. She was a wife, mother, and took care of the house, the laundry, cleaning, and cooking. But her cooking was astonishing, and I always had that in my head. I grew up in West Philadelphia for the most part, where we didn't have McDonald's and fast food, and I just thought everybody ate homemade pasta and roasted peppers and, you know, fried sweetbreads. That was like an American thing, right? No, apparently not. Then I went to the CIA in 1979, graduated in January of '82. And I was puzzled. I mentioned this at lunch today. Because CIA, we knew what it was. This was the old days. It was an inexpensive trade school, a fraction of what it costs today. The curriculum was similar, the same degree you got when you graduated. It was about 2.5 years with an internship. But as a young Italian American, everything they were teaching was French. French this, French that, French sauces, French butchering. And I didn't quite get why they weren't teaching Italian food. They broke Italian food down into one block divided in half. Half of it was Italian. My instructor was Claudio Peppini. He was a real character. And the other was Chinese. And that was the only Italian you saw. And it kind of took me a while. It's changed, by the way. Colavita invested a fair amount of money, and now they have the Catherine de' Medici room up at the CIA, so they're giving it a little bit more weight. But as I got into the industry, came to New York in '82 and worked, you know, it occurred to me that the French had done a great job of promoting and codifying classical French cuisine. Thanks to Carême and Escoffier and Ferdinand Point and the Repertoire de Cuisine, there were books of recipes that you followed religiously in order to get from the beginning to end of most of the French classical tome. Italy didn't have that. Italian cuisine is really, to me, almost the opposite of French cuisine. Really, one of the hallmarks of French cooking is the manipulation of ingredients to turn one thing into something else by the end, whether it was sauce work or charcuterie. Italian cooking is the opposite. It's almost the less on the plate, the better off you're going to find the food. Simplicity seems to be what rules the day, and to its credit, it's been way ahead of its time. We talk now about farmers markets in America, head to tail and cooking in season. In all the years I've traveled through Italy, my least memorable meals were those ones we took at Michelin restaurants. This is going back to the 80s and 90s, where the food was really kind of reaching across borders into France, technique-wise. And he's completely correct. It's the same in France with expensive silverware and expensive china and expensive glassware and fancy. But the food never spoke to me. The food I loved would be that day you were driving off the Amalfi Coast up to Rome and you pulled over to some little, I don't even know what it was, a restaurant by a gas station on the side of the road. In that kitchen was a grandma with an apron. She threw down a menu and you could barely read it, and you had the best ceps of your life, or the best zucchini flowers of your life, or just the best food. It was the simplicity that spoke to it. So the discussion today, what was up on this wall before about the future of Italian cuisine, it's a good question. I don't have the answer. But I think that there's this tension between, well, there's, I guess, three things. There's one that we spoke to earlier, that you're correct. The Italians, like the French, like most of Europe now, that if you have Grana Padano, if you have Parmigiano Reggiano, if you have Speck, if you have San Daniele Prosciutto, Parma, you have to be able to have standards that are adhered to. The governments have to put that on the suppliers. That if you're going to call it that, it has to be made with this milk, in this season, aged this long, made in this way. That's great. That has to stick around, because the bastardization of that would be the end of it. But when I think of Italian cuisine as a New Yorker right now, and we could go back, we talked about this a little bit today, if you were traveling through San Francisco, in the 70s or 80s. There was a great Italian California cuisine sprouting up out of the ground there that were primarily Italian-American or American chefs who were taking advantage of the fact that California, much like Italy, has a growing season that's about 12 months out of the year. I'm not saying it's easy to be a great chef in California, but it's easier the way it is to be a really great chef in Italy, and that you have ingredients that are a lot better than we have on the East Coast. But fast forward to where I am on the East Coast now, and I think of, really great chefs like Michael White, who's this Nordic bear of a guy from the Midwest who somehow just latched onto Italian cuisine like it was in his DNA. Missy Robbins over at Lillian, she just opened Missy across the Williamsburg Bridge last week. It's a nice Jewish girl from suburban Connecticut who just decided she was going to focus on Italian food, worked for Italian-American chefs in Chicago and here, traveled through Italy. I heard her latest restaurant, Missy, if you haven't been yet, and good luck, because it's going to be an impossible reservation to get, but it's 10 house-made pastas, 10 seasonal vegetables, and maybe 1 protein. It's about as simple as it gets. So for me, that was always the hallmark of Italian cuisine, is don't get in the way. Pick the best ingredients, pare down the amount of ingredients you're putting on every dish, and let the ingredients speak. The good news also for all of us here in America, and specifically in these coastal cities like West Coast and New York, and now it's spreading everywhere, is that the ingredients in this country have just gotten so much better. Was another comment I wanted to make that I made at lunch today with the team, is that when I first came to the city in '82, there were 10 or 15 really well-known restaurants, if that, the Leila restaurants in the East 50s, the Four Seasons. There was nothing in Midtown, nothing in the villages to speak of, little spots, but there wasn't a restaurant scene that was anything that resembled today. And all of those restaurants, Lutèce, Le Côte Basque, Le Caravelle, Le Grand Oui, they all had the same menu. I mean, you could basically be the saucier at one restaurant one night, go into the next restaurant the next night, do the same thing, go into the next restaurant the next night and work grill, because you're going to be doing Dover sole, rack of lamb, and vegetables out of season all year long out of the back of the Baldor truck. That's what we had. We couldn't get good butter. We couldn't get good bread. We couldn't get good cheese. It was a very different New York than we have today, where I'd say, again, thanks to American creativity and the American palate's appreciation. I think the American consumer has really come a long, long way. Chefs, of course, have led that way, and the food is just so much better than the food we were cooking for people in the 80s. And I say that as a chef that comes from the 80s. The good old days weren't the good old days. The good old days in New York are now. Want to bring the panel up and we can just start throwing things around, or am I breaking protocol? Gianfranco, why don't you introduce everyone, because you put it together. And I'll just pick up this discussion. I hate hearing myself talk, so I'd much rather pick the brains of the panel in front of us.
Okay, so let's... let me introduce Laura from Latteria San Pietro, Piero Selvaggio from LA, the owner of Valentino restaurant, a restaurant with 45 years in business, and Jordan Frosolone, the executive chef of 10 Corso Como.
All right, Laura, why don't we start? Talk about what you're doing and what the production is, Grana Padano, what that means, and how you see the quality standards being tightened and adapted on the Italian side.
Buonasera a tutti, I'm Laura from Latteria San Pietro. I'm here with Stefano Pezzini, the owner of the dairy. I'm proud to represent an extraordinary production, an Italian excellence in the world, Grana Padano PDO cheese. When we talk about Grana Padano, we talk about emotion, we talk about feelings, we talk about a product that has, I don't know if everyone knows, but has more than 1,000 years of history. This means authenticity. This means that 1,000 years ago, the monarch, because Grana Padano burned to solve a problem, the problem of milk that was enough. There was an exceeding of milk, and the monarch of Milan find this way to preserve milk, and now we have this product, and the magic of this product is that the production method has not changed. It's the same. So when we talk about authenticity, we talk about 1,000 history. So we talk about a cheesemaker that knows its milk, that knows how much has to get a hot milk, that knows the seasoning of this product, because we have this long history, but we have also a long seasoning of this product. So we have minimum 9 months of seasoning of this product. When we have authenticity, we have also globalization. Globalization means that Italy is Italy, but we have a world. Globalization means that Latteria San Pietro, that it's the case history that I want to present you, look at this world and find different people, different culture that are mixing, and ask what can we do. In 2014, we started to produce Grana Padano PDO kosher cheese. This was a completely new method, a new way to produce. For us, Grana Padano kosher was a challenge. We started to produce it, and it's amazing because it means that we met the needing of Hebrew, because kosher it's a Hebrew certification, but it means that we also produce a very high quality product. When we produce kosher cheese, I think it's very interesting because 4 rabbis comes to Italy and see all the step by step, every moment. So we have 3 rabbis that goes to the farmer, check all the cows, check all the step of the milking, and then 1 rabbi come in the dairy and check all the step. This means that an already high quality product as Grana Padano, because it's certified. At the end of the 9 months, we have all the checking about the consortium, and this means that we have a very, very high product. I think we need quality, we need safety, and we need a product that meets all the needing of people. For example, also Latteria San Pietro started to produce Grana Padano without an ingredients. We start to produce Grana Padano organic way. We start to produce also Grana Padano with the low salt content. This is the way we decided to follow. Thank you very much.
Pietro, you've got a great story. So Pietro has Restaurant Valentino in Santa Monica that's on one of the longest runs, the envy of, 40 years?
It will be 46 in December.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a run. So, you have a unique background. Sicilian, I didn't realize this. You got a Brooklyn connection, so there's a New York connection here. If you could, 2-part question. Just for the people in this room that may not know, and I was one of them until lunch today, give me a little bit of your background story, the bio of, the early years to how you ended up in Santa Monica. And then how you've seen, I'd love to hear, through the lens of your mind, how you've seen Italian food in this country evolve over that time frame. Because nobody's had a longer seat at the table that's ringside than you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the applauses, because somebody that is crazy to be in the restaurant business as long as I've been deserves all of that. Oh my gosh, where do you start? I was the typical little immigrant that never saw a restaurant until I came to New York. And what was my first job? To wash pots and pans at Hayden Hall in the New York University. That was really the first approach of seeing that they handle a restaurant. There is the dishwashing machine where you wash pots and pans and so forth. But I was blessed because there have been few people that in my life have make me stop and think. And one of that was an Italian law student that told me, go away from here. You want to go to college, you want to enlarge your experiences, be a pioneer, go somewhere else. And at 17, and with a lot of guts, I had an uncle that was in California, and he was in a restaurant. And I asked him if he could be my legal guardian. And with the bus, 3 days and everything, I went to see Uncle John. Uncle John, I thought was a waiter, and I thought that was absolutely the lowest. My gosh, my uncle from California, I thought that was the king of jeans or was an actor or whatever. He was, yes, a server, but he was a server in a fantastic restaurant that was a celebrity restaurant at that time called Cheson's. So from the back door, I started learning what it is to entertain. And more than that, I started learning, watching, of course. I started learning what it is to have this thing, the true food. You can give a lot of hospitality and a lot of fun to people and give a lot of experiences. So the boss boy eventually became a waiter, became more, went through college, taught Spanish, hated, and I ended up in the restaurant business. And I realized that in the front, I could be a perfect, charming server, but I didn't know anything about food until somebody told me, hey kid, you better wake up because it's going to be too late, and you have a horrible wine list on tap. So it was really time to do a lot of homeworks, but a lot of them. And the first thing that I did was to really reach out to friends that could teach me. And one of the things that you learn as you go in life is that humility is your best virtue if you are honest enough, and you will continue always thinking that there is something to learn, something to adapt, something to adjust, and more than anything, something that somebody does better than you. But one of those things is that you want to be at least at a certain level. And my first confrontation was when I went to Milano, thanks to this journalist that kind of became my guideline. And he introduced me to things I've never seen before. He introduced me to a carpaccio, and I thought that raw meat was something the Italians didn't do. He introduced me to this big potato that had such enormous smell that went on top of the carpaccio, and I thought I died and I went to heaven. And that was when I started thinking, I want to be like them. I want to be as good as them. And so coming back to my little restaurant became a big crisis, because I realized that I didn't have very far to go. And I would have been one of the many trendy restaurants that will last 6 months, a year, maybe 2 if you're luckier, but that's about it. And so I start kind of figuring out. Mozzarella marinara was this rubbery piece of cheese, and it didn't look good. And I had just discovered that in Italy there is this incredible mozzarella. I discovered that there were olive oil that we didn't have in this country, and all of the other ingredients that became so necessary and essential. And so I became an ambassador, a pioneer, and more than that, I became what made our restaurant last all of this year, and eventually became an impresario with many other restaurants and so forth. But the guideline was always the same. The guideline is be true to what you believe, and of course, use the right ingredients. We have been hearing about, a lot of the Italian chefs and so forth. There is one that I respect more than any, and I said the 3-star Michelin, for whatever Michelin means, and it's a husband and wife couple. They have a restaurant near you between Parma and Mantova called Dal Pescatore. You know what they do? They do the simplest thing possible. They have the chicken, and they make the most incredible broth. They have, of course, blessed with culatello and with all of the best salumi. They have foie gras, because in Italy we do have foie gras, and they apply it to the very best possible cooking. And whatever they do is strictly Italian, strictly regional, and is done in a way that you say, this is Italian, this has aromatics and so forth. And all of the French chefs come and copy from them, and they admire them and so forth. The wave of all of these chefs that are passing by, and then there's going to be a new generation, another new generation, is due to the fact that in Italy, we are not as lucky as here. In Italy, they got to come up with brilliance because people don't go to restaurants. At home, you eat better. And the trattoria is the ultimate place. I am very lucky that I was able to bring whatever I learned. It wasn't from my mama, but whatever I learned through the years and the products and so forth into a package. And then the best thing that we forget, a restaurant is a theater. And somebody has to run the theater, and somebody has to coordinate all of these beautiful things that happen around that make an evening special, an experience. And more than anything, the memory that today, as we have gone through, makes dining, if that is a word, and of course it's a little discussion we're going to have about globalization and about tradition, but makes all of that really shine, really lively and bubbly. I was very lucky because in the 70s, nothing was happening in Los Angeles. You had the Steve Hotel restaurant, you had the usual coffee shop and so forth. There wasn't that between. There wasn't the real trattoria. And we started that way, but we started with Neapolitan food because that's the only thing that my partner knew then. And then when I went to the next step, I realized that I was one of the pioneers. I have a very close friend that you all know. His name is Wolfgang Pack. He was the best chef we had in town, and he says, I'm going to do pizza. And of course I say, you're crazy and so forth. But you have to give him the credit for coming up with his own version. So he uses an Italian ingredient as basic as possible, and then he puts smoked salmon on it, he puts caviar, he put cream cheese. Yes, it's not Italian, but it's another way of globalization that has become more and more the way the chef and the new generation has been really embracing the world of food. And Alice Water was a perfect example because she believed in vegetables and in farming more than anybody. And she had this little farm. She lives in San Francisco. This farm was in San Diego. It's called Chino Farms. And they were way, way before the farmers market syndrome. They were really planting anything you wanted. So one day I went and I said, there is this thing called radicchio. It has red leaf and it is like a chicory and this and that. They planted, it was spectacular. So a little bit of the conversation about authenticity has to be accepted because the first radicchio that I brought from Chioggia cost me $32 for the little case and about $160 for freight. What will you charge people for that? So we now more and more have great artisans, mostly Italian, that are producing here the best possible things of what we know about that we use in our kitchen. There is another problem that we have now, which is because of immigration, because even in Italy there are no stars except those superstars that to me are not superstars, etc. We don't have the young chefs that will come from Italy and then they can adapt to the American way of doing things. And we all have to be very flexible. We have a clientele that wants veal parmigiana. It would be silly if you have an Italian restaurant not to make it. You make the best veal parmigiana you can, and same thing with any of the pasta, any of the sauces, etc. But these young people want to sometimes do their own kitchen or cuisine, and they don't realize that that's the wrong way. Just learn the basics, go to the Culinary Institute, go and stage with some of the big stars and so forth, but then interpret your own way, but don't lose the boundary. Don't lose anything in the translation because that will make all of the difference. We can go on, but
no, thank you. Which is a great segue to Jordan, which you were just alluding to. So you're the in-between generation that's kind of going to run forward with the ball. We're the old guys at the table. So you talk about, you've got an interesting resume. I had your food at Sessanta, which I loved. You recently have a new restaurant that you're part of the opening, that you're going to be part of that team, Italian restaurant. Talk about what your sense is as an American chef, the prism you see Italian food through, and how you feel the challenges as a chef and a business person that has to run a restaurant where you're, one of the biggest mistakes we all make as chefs is cooking for ourselves. Big mistake. listen to what the customers are saying, and that's who's paying the bills. So you run with that ball.
All right. So it is a major point of contention with all chefs and with all restaurateurs and with all diners of how do you, as a chef, make something that is interesting, make something that is unique, and make something that is willing and able for people to really talk about it in order for a restaurant to be successful in the chef's eyes. Where at the end of the day, as Pietro said, it's really about the client, and it's really about the guest, and it's really about doing something that is simple and recognizable and craveable and will bring guests back to the restaurant again. So with Italy, for me, I think that when I think of the authenticity and globalization question, it is very complex and it is full of contradictions. All I want is to go to Italy and to meet these farmers and to embrace their products and embrace their hard work and go to their small towns and be the best ambassador that I can be for some of these people who don't necessarily have the platform to get their product to the United States. How do we tell their story? How can we bring their product to this market and to really celebrate all of the hard work and all of what they do? And is that actually what they want? Is globalization necessarily the best thing for a small farmer in Salerno who is maybe perfectly happy with what they do and their family's farm and the tomatoes that they grow? This is a question that I struggle with and that I think about. For me, it is the most exciting part of being a chef in the United States and being a chef in America and having the opportunity to explore Italy and to see it through a country and not necessarily through a region. And to bring that back to the United States and be as authentic and as true to Italian culture through understanding and through knowledge and being respectful to tradition and leaving the idea that it has to be something special and something new and something unique, when something new and something special and something unique is not necessarily what Italian food is. We have the best food with our parents or with our grandmothers or in the small restaurant, not in the major metropolitan cities where we're going to be seen, but more in the small areas of the country that, for me, are the most willing to be embraced and the most exciting stories.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. Gianfranco, I don't know how many of you have been to either of his restaurants, Il Gattopardo or the Leopard up in the old Café des Artistes based on 67th, but I don't remember the first meal I had when I had it, but I remember meeting your chef, who you're so lucky to have partnered with, Vito Nazzo, who's just one of these guys, as someone who's, like most of us, I started pot washing at 13 because I didn't get an allowance, because Italians don't give their parents allowances. So it was either delivering papers, pumping gas, or washing pots. I did the other two and decided I liked pot washing the best, because there was always glasses of wine coming back there, and there were waitresses that were nice, and you could smoke in the kitchen back then. No one cared. But this Vito Nazzo, his chef, is just amazing. I mean, in this day of Instagram and skinny guys with tattoos and followers, I mean, this guy, his chef, just wakes up in the morning and thinks about putting that apron on and making the best food possible every day, day in and day out. And I just have to give him such a shout out for that. The food's just remarkable, and Vito, you are, as you well know, really lucky to have him as a business partner for the last 17, 18 years?
25.
Okay, I'm close. That long. Anyway.
And I've been married for 17, so.
I knew there was a 17 in there somewhere. Sorry. So you're again, you've got skin in the game here in the city. Talk about, I mean, your restaurant's really great. It's traditional. I don't know what Vito's doing in the space of innovation. I don't think he needs to. I mean, there's dishes I will just go back to your restaurant for again and again for that dish to be repeated the way I had it the last time, which it always is. But how do you see this? Because we're talking about this tension between globalization, the future of Italian cuisine. Is it going to become bastardized? Is it all going to go to heck, or is it going to evolve in some way that makes sense, that's linear, and speaks to the fact that as you and we all talked about this today, people travel now. It's become a global marketplace. People have passports. They go to different countries. People have camera. Right, the news gets out there instantly. So how are you seeing that in New York with your customers, and then in general as you travel?
Well, today we were talking, and with the Piero, we were mentioning a chef in the Amalfi Coast, who told me once, he said, Gianfranco, I cannot cook the matriciana, the carbonara. I have to differentiate because there are so many restaurants in Italy that they cook the matriciana, the carbonara better than me because they are used to home where they eat these dishes. So I have to differentiate, I have to do the interpretation of Italian cuisine, my interpretation. So I'm thinking the opposite. I do a step back to be innovative. In the meaning, me and Vito, we started to search in the cultural basket of the Italian cuisine and come up with the ingredients that we don't use anymore, with the recipe that we don't do anymore. I remember very well when we opened up Gattopardo 17 years ago, one of the first customers was an Italo-Americano from Naples, the family, etc. And he ate the pasta alla Genovese, and he started to cry because...
The pacchette.
Alla Genovese. And he started to cry because he said he never tasted the pasta since his grandmother passed away. So this is what we want to do. We want to get back to our roots. We started to search for the ingredients. We're now doing many pasta with the ancient grain. We get the grano carosella, we get the grano, the buckwheat, the saraceno, the farro, and we're doing these dishes as they used to do it before the 40s, when everything started to change. Actually, a friend of mine, I said, after the war, we have a different cuisine also in Italy. He said, after the war and the invention of the refrigerator, anyway. So this is our concept, to get back, step back, and to be innovative in presenting what the Italian people, they don't cook even in Italy anymore. I went to Sicily with a group of journalists for 7-8 days. We couldn't eat one day the pasta with the sarde. There is nobody anymore in Sicily that cook the pasta with the sarde. So we're presenting the pasta with the sarde again. You know, and this is our, let's say, difference. I do something different because I do something that nobody does anymore. I step back, go in the past, and present it. Of course, innovative. The portions are not the same. They have to be lighter, easier to digest, and things like that.
This pacchette dish he's talking about, so it's, Vito told me the story, I didn't know this. I had it at the restaurant, and I'm like, this is really delicious. As a chef, I appreciate, if it tastes great, I'm on board. I'm not big on Instagrams and how the plate itself looks. So I wanted to get the story from Vito, and he told me, why is it called pasta? The pasta is the shape, and Genovese is the name, and I'm like, how's this Neapolitan? Honestly, the first time I ordered it, I thought I was going to get pesto. Excuse me, Genovese, I don't know, so it's pocketed with pesto. This plate, it's not that at all. So it goes back to that time in Naples, when it's hard to imagine Italy before tomatoes, but Italy before tomatoes, when 1700s, 1600s, and they think, the story goes, that the chef came down from Genoa and made this dish, and it's the simplest thing in the world. It is a braised piece of anything on the bone. Could be beef, could be veal, could be pork, but a kind of a fatty, bony piece that's seared. And to that, you add a voluminous amount of julienne onions, and I mean a voluminous amount, a splash of white wine, put a lid on it, throw it in the oven, lower the temperature, and forget about it for about 3.5 hours. The onions cook down to confit, the meat reveals its juices that become the flavor, and it's finished with fresh marjoram and a little bit of olive oil at the table. If that's not Italian and simple and delicious, I don't know what is. It's peasant food, it's rustic food, and when you're eating it, your hair's standing up. We're going to open this up. If you guys have any questions, in about 5 minutes we can open this up? 10 minutes, we'll open this up. But again, we wanted to get controversial here. I think you were telling me to. So, the first piece that I read that I didn't write, is this something in Italy now that's a big discussion? I mean, you travel back and forth more than I do, as do you. Is there some sense in Italy that because like it or not, chefs have kind of become celebrities because of television and because of whatever. I mean, when I was a kid, it was a shit job, and it still really is. But we like it, and we signed up for it, and we enjoy it. Now we just get paid a little bit more. But is there this tension now in Italy that because of these chefs going for Michelin stars, that there's kind of a bastardization of Italian cuisine, that there isn't a young generation coming up that's doing it? You tell me.
Well, there is an abuse of this thing called the Michelin star.
Yeah.
Looks like all of the chefs of a certain caliber in Italy want to have the star because it's going to fill up the restaurant.
Right.
The sacrifices involved in that and the expenses never justify the means. So there is this confusion of being at the top, because at the top means that you are like Crack on television, or you are like Bottura being the ambassador, etc., etc. But those are the exceptions. Just 2 or 3, the rest are all copycat that try to do the best they can, and eventually they'll realize, do what you do well, just like Gennaro Esposito, just like Ciccio Sultano, which are the 2 chefs of Southern Italy that probably more than any, yes, they are connected with all of the other chefs, but they are doing what's regional, what is using the best ingredient. You go to Sultano, he has chicken farms, and he has the most incredible chicken, well-fed. He has the cow Modicana, which is probably one of the best producing milk cow that we have in Italy. And he makes the most incredible, not him, but they make the most incredible ricotta. And that is just an example to tell you how much more now these people have ingredients, have the raw product and the simplicity of the raw product. And then, of course, then they become the artist, then they become the creator. And the new generation needs that, because there are schools now we didn't have it before. You know, to be a chef means, remember the Monsu? You know, you had to kind of cheat because there were no written recipe. You either wash a lot of dishes and then little by little steal. Now is not the case, because you can have bases first, or basics, and then after that you can really have your moment of glory. But this happens in the States too. Everybody dreams to open a restaurant, and some do, some don't. But you know, it's something that we all dream. If there is an American dream, is to become a great chef, because of course television has done all of that. And in Italy it's not any different, because you know, I flip through the Italian channels, and you know, 3 out of 10 programs are cooking, you know, different. And we do have an incredible strength, which is our regional cuisine, our historical cuisine, our incredible ingredients. And if they are being blended together, let them fight and have their own little moment of glory. It's going to pass by. I mean, I am in the land of movie stars. Imagine how many people have been passing by, and the harder they fell. And this is what's going to happen. If you are true to yourself and you do feel what are the ingredients and what you want to do with it, then you can really say my food, which is never is food, but is the interpretation and the inspiration of what it's all about.
Yeah, Italian food. One of my favorite restaurants in the city for years has been Peasant down on Elizabeth Street. I don't know if you know it. Frankie DiCarlo's the chef. It's a pretty under-the-radar restaurant. Frankie does not have an Instagram account. He doesn't. Maybe he has tattoos, but if they did, they're probably motorcycles or something. But Frankie's an interesting guy. Jersey kid, came to New York and trained with Italian chefs when there were good restaurants still in Little Italy, spent a lot of time going back and forth between Bari. And when he opened up the restaurant with his wife, Dulcie, back in the late 90s, there was no gas in the restaurant. It was all wood. There was a wood-fired, those ovens like they have in Bari that look like pizza ovens. There was a wooden rotisserie that he still has, and even his pasta station was fired with wood. And like most restaurants that open up, it hadn't gotten reviewed. They didn't know what was going on, and he was a studied chef. And one of the early customers he had was Jean-Louis Paladin, who you probably know. Jean-Louis is a legendary French chef from Washington, D.C. Jean-Louis brought Danielle here, so Jean-Louis Paladin was probably the most important French chef of his generation, died sadly of cancer years ago. But he was a striking guy, long frizzy hair, big glasses, wore a scarf around his neck, and he was eating at Peasant one night by himself. Frankie was shitting himself cooking for Paladin. Paladin, 2 days later, comes back with Eric Ripert from Bernardin. The next week, they come back with Christian Delouvrier, who was then cooking somewhere uptown. The next week, they came back, Paul Bocuse made it a 4-top. And after this meal, cooking for these giant gods of French cuisine who loved the restaurant. And again, this is as simple as it gets. This is very pared down food. Everything goes in that oven. There's just 3 ingredients on the plate, and it's fantastic. They all came back and they saw the kitchen and they were just astonished. This guy was cooking with wood. I mean, Paul Bocuse, that's when he did his internship before World War II, that's how they cooked. So it's funny. So even in New York now we get these echoes of what Italian cuisine kind of could be and how malleable it is. And I think my takeaway with coming into this thing was I didn't have any answers, but cuisine isn't something that's fixed. It's always been something that's evolved. I go back to my days at the CIA. This was the CIA back then. It was ghetto. It was Roth Hall and 3 dorms that were cinder block cubicles, and kids were living up in Roth Hall too. It was a dorm as well. But they had a library, and I was an idiot from Philadelphia that didn't know anything, but was paying for this and really wanted to get the most. And I remember going to the library and reading about Roman cooking and reading about Apicius and reading about the history of this thing. So this sort of evolution of Italian cuisine isn't something that we can stop. I mean, change is inevitable. I think one of the troubles that happened in France was the French really did nothing after Nouvelle cuisine. It was Escoffier and Ferdinand Point, and then all the Nouvelle guys, and then it kind of just fell off the rails. Nobody did anything. And maybe the most innovative work being done in and around Paris and in France today is actually being done by non-French chefs who went there and decided to cook. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Italian food in this country, but I think the hallmarks of it are simplicity. I agree the ingredients for authenticity, if you're using Italian ingredients, you really have to find out. I've been to San Marzano, I've been in those fields. It looked nothing like I thought it was going to be. If you've ever been to California and seen the Central Valley, it's like acres and acres and acres of produce grown. You go to San Marzano and these little tiny family farms are like a half an acre with a little cinder block house they live in, and those tomatoes, those like banana shaped tomatoes out of that volcanic soil with that water table are just spectacular. But it's going to continue to change and has to change. And an opinion on that from any and all of you of where Italian food's going as you see it.
I guess it's really time for consolidation. We have discovered everything. We have nothing but restaurants all over the country now. Italian is not just because of pizza and pasta, but because we have so much variety, is the food of choice in this country. Pasta, hamburger, the food of choice is anything Italian. And has been encouraging to see that the products, thanks to technology, now go everywhere. And the good chefs understand. They don't have to be Italian to understand what is the use of a great Grana Padano, what is the use of a great burrata, whatever. And with that, we now have to think that the fine restaurant is so expensive, it's so hard to keep up. Let's just be true to whatever is the middle of the road restaurant that has great ingredient, that has good people working for you with a sense of hospitality, and then the price is right too. Under the right circumstances, if you can put all of these things together, I think there is going to be a big crisis with the fine restaurant. Let the Italians have the 3-star Michelin. We need good food, simple food, and great Italian food.
I like it. That's a good prescription.
In my case, I see in a different way because I produce a food that has to please of course, the customer, but also I have a clientele that come to my restaurant 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week. So, when you go to that big restaurant, the 3-star Michelin, when do you go there? First, because you cannot afford the $400-500 per person or so forth. Also, you go there when is the mother-in-law coming to New York and you want to impress her, when you want to take the girlfriend that you want to propose and things like that. Are those restaurants the restaurant that you go once a week, twice a week? I don't think so. So on that way, I think that the kind of restaurant like mine, and as I said before, there are the Italian cuisine in the US and Italian cuisine in Italy. Italian cuisine in US, I think that has to be the kind of cuisine, the restaurant has to be the kind of restaurant that the people recognize what they're eating. And then if you use the great product, the simplicity, not only putting the product together, but the techniques, etc., I think that you cannot fail anyway.
It's interesting. I was out in San Francisco last week. It'd been a while since I'd been out there, and we were only in the city for basically a night and a half, and I wanted to have a good meal. There's a young American chef, Jersey kid, Matt Accarino, who for many years worked for Thomas Keller at Per Se, Greg has a great resume, really talented. And when he went out there, he opened SPQR, and I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was, going to be this big fancy place. And I go in, and it was kind of a glorified bar. And Matt was holding 2 seats for us at the bar next to him, where he was doing prep. He was working with sea urchin all night, and talked. And to your point, I mean, he said, Mike, I worked at Per Se, all these guys. I did all this fine dining, Michelin 3-star stuff, but when it came time for me to put my money out, what kind of restaurant I want to open, it's not that restaurant. I want a place where people come back 3-4 times a week, where there's a pasta program that's great, where the produce constantly changes, where the food's healthy, and it's approachable. And I think, he just captured it. He nailed it. And I remember putting something on Instagram about it, and Eric Asimov, the wine writer for the Times, I was there last week. The place is amazing. So, I think that speaks to your point.
Yeah, also I would like to add something else, because this great restaurant, this 3 stars restaurant, they work usually with 1 cent per dollar as profit. Yeah. The money they make with other things, consulting, the show on TV, the books, etc. So at the end, I think also restaurant business is a restaurant business. It's a business. I have to make money.
It's true. Joel Robuchon, everybody knows Joel Robuchon retired at 50. And if anyone that knows, Eric Repair claims he got gray hair working in that kitchen for 2 years, which I believe. But Robuchon was like the ultimate tortured chef. He was walking that 3-star Michelin wire for 17 years and just decided at the age of 50, I'm done with this. Alan Sondrens did the same thing at the Luca Carton. He'd had Michelin stars at Arcastrat, Luca Carton, and just said, I'm done walking this tightrope. I want to make food that's approachable. I want to lower the price point. I want to make food where you can have some profit margin that's reasonable, but they had to scale it back in order to take it forward.
We have talked a great deal. We started with wine. We don't have to forget how important wine is in the Italian diet, and we don't have to forget how important Italian wines have to become. And we have, and I have to acknowledge, Leonardo Locascio, that is probably the best ambassador that I know. Leonardo, you've been in the wine business how long?
I started in 1980, Piero.
And you remember how mediocre Italian wines were and how they have become world class now?
I remember very well. Chiantis in the straw flask. And,
right.
I remember Valpolicella and Suavebola, and I remember Corso, and the few Italian wines that were available at the time.
And you single-handed really introduced the best of Italy in the United States, and I commend you for that. But I think connected to that, I like to say the importance of wine today, because there cannot be great Italian food without the wine of the region, if nothing else. Right now, for example, in Sicily, by the volcano, there is a whole explosion. The volcano explodes that way, but all around, there is an explosion of incredible little wineries, because Nerello Mascalese is becoming the red grape of choice. You go to the Amalfi Coast and Campania, and of course the wines are just unbelievable. And every region has given us so much, so that connects so much with Italian food and makes us lucky, because we are the salespeople of that. And you can go with a smile and say, trust me, for $20 I can give you a better wine than Australian or California, whatever.
Yeah, you're completely right. And luckily, Americans' wine consumption is going up annually on a per capita basis, and has been for years. So we've become the #1 target market for pretty much every producer out there. And I'm astonished, as an old guy eating at restaurants, at how many, I'm going to call them kids, because if you're in your 20s, you're a kid. I'm astonished at how many kids are at restaurants are just reading wine lists and asking the most dialed-in questions. They've got palates. They identify varietals that I'm still learning about. You go back 15, 20 years, in New York history, and there were 6 restaurants, maybe 5 in the 90s that had a sommelier. That was it. Now, if you go on the floor of any serious restaurant, you probably have a somm on the floor, probably have a beverage director that's around, and the staff is trained in wine tasting constantly. So I think our palates have really come up too. So kudos to this younger generation of Americans that are just really embracing food and wine together, to your point.
Great enthusiasm.
Open it up. So if anybody has any questions for any of us, please raise your hands, and we'll start at the bottom left. Sir, you.
How do you feel about Italy opening up throughout the world? I think they have 25 Italis. They're in Dubai, bringing Italian food to the rest of the world, throughout the States.
It's a great question. Why don't you guys run with that one? I've talked enough, I think.
Well, I have to say that when they opened up the first one in New York, I was amazed because it really was the store that put together, the concept to put together so many small producers in one basket, present that in New York was great. But unfortunately, lately, let me say in a nice way, but lately I see that they have the same kind of product that I can find next door and cost probably 30-40% less. So I was very, very happy when they opened up. Now my wife calls it like the Walt Disney of Italian product.
The Walt Disney, yeah. I think as a New Yorker too, I'm old school. I mean, if I want cheese and salumi, I'm going to Lou DiPaolo and I'm going to buy it there. If I want pasta, I'm going to go to Raffetto. If I want sausage, I'm going to go to the pork guy. So for me, it was a little bit of like a shopping mall for people that want that kind of convenience. But I much prefer to curate my shopping. We have enough great small artisan shop owners in New York City that I love to see that are independent. So that's my 2 cents. You had a question, sir.
A question and a comment, and a little bit of a dissenting voice.
Good.
With all the good respect for the people on stage. We had, Gianfranco, this debate at the Italian consulate. I would like to say that I think that we have to be sure that we're picking the right targets. I think the restaurant business is a democracy, so I don't think we should waste any time discussing what Bottura does or does not. I'm certainly not his defender, but there is room for everybody. I don't think it's an issue. I think the real issues are, for the Italians these days, to have enough training, and they are the goals of your association. Enough training of young chefs, some work on the visas, because it's very hard to bring anybody here. Now, with all the respect, even for the Italian Trade Commission, the pasta. I mean, Barilla produces here. You want a better pasta? Buy Italian pasta. But I don't think we have to penalize. They don't say made in Italy if it's made upstate in New York. So I think we have to pick the right targets. The right targets are the Italian products coming or they are penalized? We used to have Italian grapes. Can you find them these days? How hard is it to find decent Italian grapes these days in New York? So that's the kind of stuff we have to fight for. As for room, I totally agree with you. There is a younger generation of American chefs or Italian-American chefs that do a great job. Do I care what passport they carry? I certainly don't. So I think, again, I'm not a big defender of Bottura, but I certainly think the lady of the Wall Street Journal wasted her time. Doesn't she know what Bottura is all about? So it's her choice. She goes there, she can go somewhere else. We shouldn't go after the whole internal fighting. And even Paolini, with all respect to old friend Paolini, all this pessimism. Yeah, that's what's going on, but there is plenty of room for everybody else. The problem and the question is, are we protecting everything else? Are we making all the efforts? And I mentioned practical things, the visas for the chefs, getting some products. So that's pretty much what I think. Thanks.
Thank you. You had a question.
Yes. It's funny you should mention that. I actually work for the education department at Italy. I came here with my team tonight because I don't completely disagree with what he had to say. We came here tonight because we care about what you as ambassadors of these products have to say, and we would love to incorporate that into our programs that we do. We work at the cooking school at Italy. And so my question for you would be, as experts in this field, what do you perceive to be the most important things that we as ambassadors and educators need to impress upon consumers of Italian products, and especially in this day and age, Italian Americans who are dining in New York restaurants?
Italy does phenomenal for the image of Italian food. Everything is important, everything is impeccable. In New York, they probably have the biggest success of all, much more than in Italy. And that is one of the reasons that they really brought Italy to the shelves. However, the big problem that we have, Italy is not anymore an exclusive, because you go to Whole Food and you find a lot of things. You go to the meat market and you find probably more exciting meat variety, and same thing with everything else. But as a concept, I think Italy is absolutely brilliant. How long they can sustain outside of New York is a different thing, because people usually like. They like to see. They like the vetrine, you know, the window shopping and so forth. But you know that it's very hard to really go into the next level, that is education. They are bringing chefs. They try to really make this something that is constantly evolving, exciting, and you gotta give a lot of credit. After all, Farinetti has been a pioneer of too many things, and he's really one of the ultimate ambassador of the Made in Italy. However, it's a business, and as a business, I'm sure sometimes it's harder for you that have to represent that, and sometimes it's exciting because you have a lot to sell.
Sell they do. What do you do, 90 million a year out of that store? My son loves your store, by the way. We argue about this all the time. So the younger generation, Colameco, is all in for Italy. Just loves it.
Let me speak to that a little bit, because the beauty of Italy, and I think what Italy can do, maybe a little bit to your question, is the stories of these producers and of these hardworking Grana Padano stories. And the beauty of a lot of that product is in the story, and people love story. And restaurants don't allow for the stories to be told. So we could bring in these most amazing products and work with these most amazing people and offer the greatest things in the world, but unless we have a way to educate people, it's lost. And especially in this day and age where everything's rapid fire. So to be able to open up a dialogue and to bring these people together and to really, you know, tell the story, especially the Italian story, because there's so many beautiful things to be told, would be a great platform is something that I strive for to try to do. But unfortunately, a restaurant is not that platform to do that. Italy is potentially a great platform.
And a great example, back to Lou DiPaolo, who's not with us tonight to talk. But
On the left.
Sorry. I'm only going to say, you know, shopping at Lou's store, if you've never been, is one of the greatest experiences.
Well, I was going to acknowledge you
retail.
after Leonardo's.
Please, Lou, you've got the microphone. Jesus, sorry.
For one thing, you know, my entire life I've been in the Italian food business. And I've seen a tremendous expansion on interest in Italian food over my lifetime. One thing I want to say about Italy, the awareness that Italy has brought to the American consumer on Italian food has benefited everyone, every restaurant, every food market that sells Italian food. So for me to say, what has Italy done for me, it's helped create awareness. Now, we're in New York City. New York City feeds off 20 million people. Certainly, DiPaolo's could not service 20 million people. But I am grateful for the fact that there is an Italy to give awareness, as I'm saying that. Now, Italian food, what is Italian food today is American food. Americans love and have embraced the Italian cuisine. And over the years, they've learned what true Italian food is. I mean, I grew up with what I call Italian immigrant food, spaghetti and meatballs, you know, even shrimp parmesan. I mean, this is not Italian food, but it's Italian immigrant food. It was an adaptation to help bring some of the Italian food culture to their later generations. Going to Italy, understanding the traditions that the Italian food culture is really all about, the 20 regions of Italy and the diversity of the cuisine from each region is very exciting. And as Americans, one of their favorite places to travel is Italy. And what does food do? As was mentioned before, food invokes memory. The person who cried because he had a dish that reminded him of his grandmother. Food invokes memory. So traveling to Italy, people have accepted and embraced the Italian true cuisine. Naturally, it's going to be wanting to find it here in the United States. And just lastly, I agree with you 100%. Peasant is probably one of the most authentic Italian restaurants you could eat in. It's the simplicity of the food. You taste every ingredient that's on that plate. And that's what really Italian food is all about. It's tasting everything that you have down there. And there's 4 places, by the way, although I found the 5th place, to eat in Italy. And you have to experience every one of them. 1, Restaurante, elegant, dining, Michelin star, wonderful. Trattoria, casual, easygoing. Pizza, pasta. Osteria. Osteria, it's like an extension of someone's home. You want to experience an osteria, that little roadside place that you stopped off on the side of the gas station that you mentioned before, and then eating in someone's home. The experience of eating with a family in Italy is the true ultimate. By the way, I did find the 5th place to eat in Italy, and that was up in Amalga. Amalga is the grazing areas in the summer for farmers that bring their cows up into the mountains. Is the food the best? Is the experience the best? Yes. It's because you're eating with people that love what they do and gave their life to give us such wonderful fresh milk from cows that feed in the grazing lands, living in the summer, not going to any movies or anything like that, and then transporting it to places like San Pietro to make wonderful cheeses such as Grana Padano. So Italy is a spectacular place to visit, and it's a spectacular place to bring back here to the United States. And that's what I have to say.
And DePaolo's is a fantastic place to shop. Thank you, Lou.
Yeah?
Yes, sir.
So my question is about the future of chefs and future of Italian cuisine. As we were discussing, we see René Redzepi taking a predominant role in new Nordic cuisine in Copenhagen, Denmark, where previously there was no such a cuisine, or I guess a very poor culinary scene. Now we go back in Italy and we see Massimo Bottura, we see Eugenio Burr, we see Giuseppe Iannotti, Mattias Perdomo reinterpreting Italian cuisine. And in the case of Redzepi, we see him going from Ferran Adrià to eventually reinterpreting his technique and idealizing what is new Nordic cuisine. So do you think, will there ever be a new Italian cuisine that's accepted? And if so, do you think that technique have to be Italian for a cuisine to be considered such?
It's a great question.
You have a great question, and probably you have hit the most in this whole symposium of globalization. Yes, remember, we have a great luck. Danish food is Danish food, no matter what Regli can invent. There was another fellow that wanted to do it with Peruvian cuisine. Yes, and you know, they are going to be passing by because it goes well with their territory, and they are not going to really influence what is the globalization of today. We have to give credit to the people that have made globalization a big thing. And for example, we use it as crudo, but you know, the Japanese have the perfection of what is raw fish well treated. We have to give technique to the French because they are the best at it. So everybody, if we consolidate to our food, I think we have a real winner, and then it's up to you guys, because those have to be your idol, your inspiration, and so forth. But then your goal has to be, I want to do my own interpretation of good food. Don't bastardize it. Don't mess it up. And you can inspire through all of these things with one big thing, which is called Italian food. Forget the word cuisine, because, you know, with Tony May, we were always debating cuisine is not an Italian word and so on. No, it's Italian. What do we have? Which is a patrimony that goes through centuries and so forth. And remember, Italy was a mess-up of many invasions. So we do have the North with the Germans and with the French. We have the Spaniards. We have the Arabs. We have everybody, and everybody brought. And then again, we perfected this thing to the point that there is no better food in the world as product and as dishes.
Sir.
I want to say that, you know, I'm very happy tonight because it's an incredible combination of being together, working together with the same passion, Italian institution with Maurizio, cultural institution like Stefano, entrepreneur and chef. we have a chef. I wish him a great success, Jordan. You know, combination of fashion and food with 10 Corso Coma, but not only that. And then we have Pietro from the West Coast with a great experience. We have Grana Padano, which is an amazing daily experience for Italians. And then we have Gattopardo with Mr. Sorrentino, who is the president of GI. And this is the best combination, an association, working together to make the Italian passion for the Italian cuisine a success. Italians always, they come to New York on their own. We are individual. We are not very happy to be together, to share together. I am better than you. You are worse than me. I'm from the north. You're from the south. I have been, dealing with this kind of stuff for my entire life, and Maurizio knows that. So having together the public institutions, the government, trying to promote, the authentic products, because authenticity is something amazing. Traditions needs, authenticity and the authentic product here. I remember when Pietro started in the West Coast, the products were not there. Few of them. Mr. Locascio said, you see, the Fiaschi, it was the first tool in wine. So having today this combination of tradition, innovation, don't forget in Italy we are, our heart is creativity. So we create fashion. And creating fashion also in cuisine is a totally Italian way, not the nouvelle cuisine. Also, Mr. Gualtiero Marchesi is considered the maestro because he created a new way. Perhaps these new talented star chefs today, they are on his way. But he created also Alma. Alma is an amazing school of Italian cuisine. I am very friend with Alma, and perhaps Alma will give a great support in the near future to promote the real authentic cuisine in New York, or the real authentic product, and helping with the GI to facilitate the visa for Italian chefs that can, with their study in Italy, they can perform, helping the Italian restaurant to have a new success here in America. Thank you very much. But I like this combination of institution and private working together. Grazie.
The gentleman here who's been very patient, you had your hands up the whole time. Is this the same question? I'm sorry. So, do you want me to answer that question? Do you mind if I jump in on this? I've been asked this a lot. These hands. It takes a certain talent to work dough to get the consistency right, to make the fillings right. We're not talking about extruded pastas necessarily here. We're talking about the hand pastas. But nonetheless, when you look at a restaurant with a heavy pasta program, especially with tortellini, with those shapes that are twisted and pulled and turned, they're so hard to make. And you get a bowl of pasta that's phenomenal, and there's 25 individual tortellini that have been, I can't tell you the work that's involved. The answer is the work that's involved in making that pasta in terms of hand work, by hand, is extensive, and it's like nothing else. Maybe 30's pushing the barrier, but I certainly don't mind spending high teens and low 20s for handmade pastas that were done in-house at restaurants. It's just the labor cost involved, and you can jump in on this because you're there.
And the cost of operating in New York City. I mean, rent and labor and all of those inherent costs that are part of doing business are all directly passed on to a consumer.
That's a big part of it.
And if you come to Gattopardo, you're going to pay $32 per and I tell you why. Because the pasta that we do with the grano saraceno, a pound of grano saraceno costs $8. Do you know how much costs a pound of all-purpose? $1. But you know what you're eating when you use all-purpose? Please, go Google. And Google what you eat when you use pasta made with a certain kind of grain. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll finish by telling you, you sit in a restaurant, the chair costs money, The waiter costs money, the dishes cost money, everything costs money, and eventually we are in business. And you understand, it's not the $30 per se, it's the fact that a restaurant, and you know why it's the biggest mortality business in the world? Because it's harder and harder to operate. I don't know how we're going to do 10 years from now at the rate we are going. Have you noticed that there aren't that many restaurants opening in New York? Because it will be insane to open for no profit or to work to slave, hoping to make the rent, hoping to make the taxes, hoping whatever there is to make. It's really the biggest drama that we have. It doesn't have anything to do with Italian globalization. It has to do with the fact that as a business, it's very hard to really put a price on anything at this point.
True. Yes, sir. You've been waiting. Sorry about that.
So I think the fastest growth in this country in restaurant startups over the last 5 years has been food courts. This is related to the last question because of cost. And I'm not talking about Italy.
Right.
I'm talking about the places where you can get sushi and ice cream
Correct.
in the same dish.
They're all over.
And I think 5 years ago, you couldn't find one in New York. Now there are probably 30, and there's a new one opening every week. So what's the role of Italian cuisine, authentic Italian cuisine, within the food court? Is there one? And then how does that portray itself?
You guys want to jump on this?
Well, food court, we have the pizza places that you can see in the food court. But you're talking about like a street food? Yeah, I mean, there are so many of street food, Italian. I see pizza truck all over the city, and I have to say they are pretty good. For $10 you get a great pizza. You can see arancini places and things like that. I think that this is probably the future of that. I want to say something. I mean, there are also another place concept like the mozzarella bar that they are quite famous and they've been booming in the last 10 years in New York. Of course, it's not a franchise like it can be McDonald's because the mozzarella is a perishable product, has to be fresh, etc., etc. But there is a kind of explosion of this concept anyway.
Yeah, food courts seems to me also to be kind of an invention of developers that have retail space on the ground floor that present a low entry point for restaurateurs to come in terms of build-outs. What they don't give you in terms of ambiance, a lot of times you're serving yourself the food, you're bussing your own table. The lighting's usually really bright, and it's a mix match of everything from beer hall to pretzels to ice cream to ramen. I'm trying to think, as you were answering, of Italian restaurants that have opened up within these food halls that have done well, and I really can't think of any. Not to say it won't happen, but usually it's like a taco guy or a ramen guy or just a kind of a niche of another restaurant, and I think it works for restaurateurs that are first-time restaurateurs or restaurateurs that want to expand who don't have the capital outlay to do it in a big way, that it's a softer price point to get in and get a retail space.
I will add that you can go to Di Polo and have the best panino or the best sandwich in the world for the same price. So this is also our difference, that with a good piece of bread and with the right ingredients inside, you have the best food for food court. And then the arancini, and then the pizza, and the gelato. We don't forget that, because that is one of our big staples. And so much. Pretty soon even espresso is going to be in the food court.
We can probably have one more question, ma'am.
So, I was born in Torino. My father Neapolis and Verace, mother from Puglia. I grew up with great food, there's no question. And 15 years ago, I started a business, a travel business, taking people to Italy and other countries as well, primarily to Italy, to explore the food and wine culture. We have clients at the collector's level and people that just want to experience the food and the wine and the culture of Italy. So to go back to the globalization and to trying to maintain the culture and the traditions, that is what people look for when they go to Italy. They look for the authentic experiences. I never go to Florence, I never go to Venice, I don't go to Rome. We go in the countryside, we explore never combine two regions. It's almost like a full immersion in each region. The food has to be paired with the local wines because that is how there is a real harmony between the food and the wine, and that's how it should be experienced. So I think to maintain the integrity of the Italian food culture is really essential, not only it's because to maintain our identity as Italians, but that is that's our patrimony. This is what is the most valuable thing that we have as Italian, our culture and our history and our food and our wine.
Thank you.
There is
Gennaro Becchia. Come va, Gennaro? You don't need a microphone.
I think this might be a little off topic, but this room is impressive. The panel's incredible. Michael, you know more about food media than most people out there. How do we kind of become a bridge to the outside world of these messages that are being conveyed tonight? Because they're so important, they're so interesting, and yes, the ingredients are expensive. People coming back and forth, learning about this stuff, somebody's got to pay for that, and it has to be the customer, and that should be an appreciation. How do we become better, like Italy becomes better to be a bridge through media, both not only through mass media, but social media when it comes to macro and micro media as well, because they've been doing a worse job than ever, because that's why sales and everything are down, because they're not really in tune with what's going on with people that are really dining out there. So how do we fix, like even the Italian Trade Commission, they have all these fancy people there, but they're not really in touch with the street, because those are the people that are going to be out shopping. How do we become better at delivering messages? That's my question.
I think Italy has a great website. Italy is a great, policy of social media, also in terms of education, because I receive a part of their, data, and this is a starting point.
But also, if you want to stretch,
and then you are an ambassador. You can be the voice because you are well known in the area, Gennaro.
Sounds like you got a job. But you already have that job. Wait a minute.
I want to be an ambassador, but the connection is how do I help folks like that are doing all this hard work to be like that, but you have to be all connected together.
Yeah, it's a great...
If somebody's from Italy, they don't speak to somebody who's Italian American. Because somebody's wearing overalls and somebody's wearing brioni, they're not treated the same. So I think there has to be a connection where Gianfranco's great about doing it, bringing everybody together. It doesn't matter if you have 200 followers, come in and try this. Come try this dish. Put it out there. But I think that's the success, is that people like Gianfranco and GRI are bringing Italians, Italian Americans together, and then we spread the news together.
It's a good point, and I think we're all trying to figure out, I'm a dinosaur, but the whole new, how to market via social media now is the $1 million question, and all of us are boring down on trying to figure out how to get on Google's first page, because no one can. And when 98% of searches are run by one company, and whatever their parameters are, whatever rules they establish, it's a little bit scary. It's a hard wall to break through, because there's this hegemonic effect in America, and globally now, of basically Google, period. It's the 900-pound gorilla in the room.
But also at events like this one, where we really see that we all are making an effort of being micro-ambassador to this big thing that is Italian food. And, Lou on one side, Italy on the other side, the wine group on the other side, we all are kind of lauding what we know best, what we do best, and what we benefit from. So it's easy to pass it because we know what we are selling.
Maybe an Italian food festival has presence for everything, instead of just Lou's amazing, you're amazing, Gianfranco's amazing, and you guys have their own little cocoon, but maybe getting together and building something that's incredible. Maybe with a younger generation, maybe there's music involved. I think Italians, they want to keep everything in their pockets, but in order to, like a Sons of Italy or something like that,
they want to fight defamation, but they won't give anybody money to actually perform somewhere to say, you know, this is opera music, this is gorgeous, you know, classical music. Everybody wants to be, you know, the king, but nobody wants to be with the peasants.
Point well made, sir. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. It's 8 o'clock, and I'm sure we have somewhere to go. Thank the panelists so much for coming. Thank you, thank you, thank you.